Hi and good night, and we're back with another episode of For the Hour. My name is Edison Thomas, and I will be your host/moderator for tonight, guiding the discussion about Tobago's business. All right, we have another number of things that are happening in Tobago's space. We had a refreshing discussion last week about music. I really much enjoyed that discussion. Right, we're just coming off fresh off the jazz experience last weekend. Word off the ground is that multiple events were successfully carried out, and commendations to the organizers for our event well done. All right. Also, over the past week, we have heard the name of our new Tobago party coming out, Tobago People's Party. Right. So a lot of developments coming out in this small island, right? And what I want to also bring about and discuss tonight for our topic tonight is the need for us to ventilate some of the statements made by our Prime Minister, all right? Dr. Keith Rowley, he would have made a statement yesterday. But however, before that statement was made, we would have had a video, Mr. Watson Duke customary puts out videos on social media, airing out Tobago's issues as well from his perspective, and he would have put out a video yesterday, all right, concerning Farley and his new party, and we want to play that clip for you first before we get to the Prime Minister's statement. Producers, we have the clip.
Allow me to pull out the belt a little bit now. Where we are is that we are currently in a position where Farley and his gang have hijacked the Tobago House of Assembly, and there should be an election in the Tobago House of Assembly. But the Prime Minister is too weak to rule on this. He's too weak to withhold the cash and force an election. He's too weak. He's playing a game where he hopes that every Monday morning I will come out and fight Farley. I want to say to Tobago, I will not be fighting Farley. Farley is a product of my party, and I will not fight Farley. I will give him a few blows. I'm giving now. But when I come off the mic now, you will not hear me for a long time talking about Farley nor their party at all. The PNM has a responsibility in the Tobago House of Assembly as the minority the opposition. Let them oppose. Let Kelvin Morris oppose. I will not be taking my time to oppose Farley and them. Let Farley run. Let him continue to deal Tobago unjustly. And it's up to Tobagonians again to accept it or to reject it. But your acceptance of it will signal to me and the national community, Trinidad and Tobago, and the wider Caribbean, that Tobagonians are dotish. Because around the world, people are rejecting the oppressors. They reject them. And if Tobagonians, you are hugging up and loving up a man who has openly committed fraud, where you vote for one party, and he then presents you with an independent, and then presents you with another party, both the independents and the party has had no mandate at any election campaign season to present to you what are you voting for. It meant that what the man came into, he has abandoned, and he's now presenting nothing to you and say support him. That is a fraud, I've never heard of it anywhere in the Caribbean or anywhere in the world where an entire cabinet would have resigned and continue to hold power at the same time from a party. It never happens. Tobago, you have to trigger an election. They have reached their end. Our mandate in Tobago was based on 3 simple things. 1, putting Tobagonians first.
All right. And that was Mr. Watson Duke, political leader of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, all right, giving his view on Fali's new party. He said that he will no longer be fighting Fali, and he quoted as saying he will no longer be doing the Prime Minister's dirty work, and so he now leaves it to the minority to fight Fali, as he said. All right? And I do not know, I can't say if Mr. Rowley was baited by this statement or if it was just a coincidence. However, the office of the Prime Minister would have released a statement, all right, just 2 hours after this video was posted. And I'm gonna read some clips of the post for you, if the producer could just put it up on screen. All right, and it's a fairly long post, not this one, producer. The post from the Prime Minister. All right, so while we get that up, right? So I don't want to be accused of taking the Prime Minister's comments out of context, but the full post is on Tobago Updates page. It's also on the Office of the Prime Minister's page. Anyone could go and read it. It is public knowledge. However, there are some pertinent parts in it that we are going to discuss tonight, in which I'm going to read for you. All right? So, and I quote, if the independent political aspirants of the disintegrated PDP wish to be taken seriously by the central government and the people of Tobago, then the Chief Secretary would do well to make arrangements for an early election within the same time frame that he is making to register a new political party with the Elections and Boundaries Commission. The behavior of the current executive in matters of governance, even at this confused stage, should be of great concern to the national population. I, as head of central government, refer specifically to the following acts perpetrated by officers of the Assembly under their warped interpretation of the country's constitution and the Tobago House of Assembly Act. And the Prime Minister went to list 5 points encapsulating the situation and that they had with the Environmental Management Authority and in relations to the EMA Act. Also, the recent confusion that we have had with the Transport Department, with the officers in Tobago carrying out their duties in Tobago, that was seen as a flagrant attack on Tobagonians, right? So I'm just going to read the closing statement from the Prime Minister. These and other similar developments known but not mentioned here are deliberately laying the groundwork for an anticipated period of unnecessary, unproductive discord and numerous expensive and destructive outings to the court for adjudication, clarification, and more. Whilst we have been doing and will continue to do everything within our means to make sure that at the level of central government, everything is done to give Tobago every opportunity to benefit from good order and good governance, it is also to be expected that the central government will continue to persuade the THA to respect the limits of its authority and act within the confines of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. The political aspirants will do well to begin this humbling process by subjecting themselves to the electorate before it's too late. All right, and quote there. All right, and before we move into this discussion, as of 3 hours ago, there would have been a reply by the Chief Secretary, Mr. Fali Chavez Agustin, which we will now via Facebook post. which we will now play for you.
In your business. As Prime Minister, I stay out of Tobago's business. The law keeps me out. I have a responsibility as head of the cabinet, and then I am out of your business. Tobago's business is run at the administrative level by the Tobago House of Assembly. It is the only place in this country where I am Prime Minister where there is an executive body running the affairs of that part of the.
All right. So we see there that the Prime Minister on a political platform said that he stays out of Tobago's business and the THA is to deal with Tobago's business. All right, so to discuss and unpack all of this information, we have our esteemed panel with us tonight, and we're going to start off with no stranger to the show, Mr. Max James, former NER Secretary and former Assemblyman of the Tobago House of Assembly. Welcome, Mr. James.
Thank you.
We
Good
have
night.
Mr. Lance Ogis, community activist and trade union officer, also no stranger to the show. Welcome back, Mr. Lance.
Thank you.
And we also have Marilyn David, THA Executive Coordinator under the Office of the Minority Leader. First time with me on the program, right? Not the first time on Tobago Updates, but first time with me on the program. So I welcome you, Mr. David.
Thank you very much.
All right. And so, esteemed panel, we just had a wealth of information coming from all sides. We had Mr. Watson Duke had his say. We had the Prime Minister had his say. We also had Mr. Augustine had his say. All right? Kind of retaliatory, but he had his say still. All right? I always start off with immediate reactions, right? And we're going to start with Mr. James, your immediate reaction, all the information coming out of the past 2 days about the Prime Minister's persuading to call an election.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am tonight avoiding that mischief maker from Roxborough. I won't even call his name. He's not worthy of mention, and therefore I'll have no comment on his nonsense. I want to focus on the Prime Minister. It was appalling to hear the Prime Minister say what he said over the weekend. And it worried a lot of us in Tobago. But as you saw in the clip a while ago, he's speaking from a different side of his mouth. And as I jokingly said a while ago, there's so much Kobo meat sharing in Trinidad, I don't know if that got to the Prime Minister's head. A lot of Kobo meat sharing in Trinidad, from all the reports. I don't know if that got to his head. Because he had to be talking a lot of bunk. And he had to be clowning in this particular issue. He has gone beyond disbelief. And as I said earlier this morning, nobody takes Rowley seriously anywhere in the Caribbean. Because every time he opens his mouth, he shows what he really is. In his public stint for almost 50 years in the Parliament, he boasts of what he has accomplished. But if you look at Rowley's record, you will see that he has done nothing for the place of his birth. Let us look at Rowley's record to see if we can really believe him and take him seriously. He called that facility out there, which we overlook at Dog Pond. But today we see him engaging a public institution only to lengthen the finger pair that is there. That is his solution to our economic woes in terms of shipping and all of that, and to bring economic activity to Tobago. That's Rowley's version, as opposed to the Secretary of Works presentation to develop Scarborough into a beaming city, a booming city, sorry. All right, forgive me. All right, and the plans for the Assembly to develop Tobago. So we can't take Rowley seriously.
Right.
All right. The Telecommunications Act, institution that was set up under us in 2000, in our term 1996 to 2001, that was scrapped. Rowley was in Parliament. Manning scrapped it, gave Orville London instruction to scrap it. And we can go on and go on. Rowley has not supported anything for Tobago. On the last assembly bill that was proposed to amend the Assembly Act and to amend their constitution, on Rowley's instructions, because we have to give him credit for it. On his instructions, land was supposed to be taken from Tobago for the benefit of the cabinet, controlled by the PNM. They sought to militarize Tobago's land space. He presided over that. He didn't challenge it. The Dispute Resolution Commission, new architecture, Rowley said nothing about it, right? And he's coming now and talk about resignation. The law doesn't recognize any political party. So it's an old, beaten, irrelevant track that Keith Rowley is foisting on the people of Tobago. This Assembly Act, Tobagonians in Tobago and in Trinidad, does not speak of any political party when you're in the House. As far as I'm concerned, the elected representatives still remain elected representatives. And the arrangement is that when they get into the House, they elect a chief secretary. So what is Rowley's problem? He says he's going to stay out of Tobago's business, but yet he talks as if he doesn't understand the law. So we are asking Mr. Keith Rowley, leave something that you had no part of, leave the assembly alone. You didn't vote for it, you criticize it, you don't want it to function, except for the benefit of PNM supporters and the thieves that occupied the assembly from 2001 to just a year ago. And he should follow his word, leave the assembly alone, except he's going to do such things for its development and improvement and a better legal infrastructure. Otherwise, keep out of Tobago. We really don't like you.
Right. All right. Mr. Ogis, your immediate thoughts?
You know, I consider the Honorable Dr. Rowley to be a senior citizen. And
senior in terms of age or senior in terms of wisdom? And
in terms of age.
Okay.
And for me, I try to take a empathetic approach, especially in dealing with senior personnel, with full respect. And sometimes I ask myself the question, is the demands of the prime ministerial office too much for him? I was looking up the term vomit recently.
Vomit?
Yeah, and
strange way to be looking at, but go ahead.
In that it appears as though there are some things on Mr. Rowley's chest that he wanted to get off.
Oh, okay.
And in his expression, these are some of the expression he made, just paraphrasing. If the political aspirants wish to be taken seriously by the central government and the people of Tobago, the last time I checked, Mr. Rowley did not speak on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, but for the constituency of Diego Martin West. So I am very much curious as to which Tobagonian had conversation with him to extort or to expel that type of conversation. And if he's to mention the central government, it means therefore that probably there has been some conversation within the precincts of the central government where they are probably not happy with the progress of Tobago under this current administration. So there are some things on his chest that is being involuntarily expelled from his stomach. He could be having some harsh, some uncomfortable feeling. And that's why when I look at the definition of vomit, with all due respect, and this is what it says, Vomit refers to the contents of the stomach that is expelled outside through the mouth. The act or process of ejecting vomit is called emesis or vomiting. It is an involuntary action whereby the contents of the stomach are forcefully ejected through the mouth.
All right.
And from a biological perspective, I think this is what took place over the weekend in that press release.
All right. We have to take a break now. We had to pay some bills. But we will come back. And when we come back, I know you're itching to go, Mr. David, right? But
I'm very relaxed. I'm even
when
more relaxed.
When we come back, we will continue with your thoughts, Mr. David. All right? So stay tuned. We're live on Tobago Updates. We'll be right back.
Tobago, it's time to go. Sweet like Tobago.
Tobago, here's the real deal. Nothing sweeter than when your internet fast all day, every day. I telling you, it's real nice when your home internet and TV package fit your budget. Well, if that's what you want, you're safe with Digicel Plus. Sign up or switch to Digicel Plus now and pay $0 for 1 month. Plus, plans start as low as $199 and you get installed for free. Visit digiceltt.com or a Digicel store now.
Everybody only worrying. Never ever worry. Don't mind how things looking hard. I tell them never ever worry. If your nice car get damaged bad, I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. Don't mind if life make you sad. I tell them never ever worry. If your house get flooded out real bad, I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil is always right here for you. I tell them never ever worry. If sickness catch you off guard, I tell them never ever worry. If times fall on you real hard, I tell them never ever worry. What I'm saying is true. So just consider Tatil will always be here for you. Never worry about a thing. Tatil, where people are people. You know what I mean.
And we're back with another program of 40 Hour. We're live on Tobago Updates, and we will continuing the discussion on the Prime Minister's call on the Chief Secretary to call a fresh elections. All right? And before we left before giving Mr. Marlon David his opportunity to say his initial thoughts. So you have the floor, Mr. David.
Thanks a lot, Edison, and again, thanks for having me on the program this evening as one of the panelists. And good evening, viewers. Good evening, Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago at large. I sat listening to both gentlemen and their contributions, and I want to begin my contribution firstly with a quote from our nation's pledge. And I know many children, at least in my days in school, there's a line that said, I will honor my parents, my teachers, leaders, and my elders. And I've said that to say that with all that we do and with all that we say, I think one of the things that must be paramount and at the forefront is respect for authority, respect for our leaders in terms of the office that they hold. Though Dr. Rowley may not be the most loved person by certain people, and we're clearly seeing that here tonight, he also holds the office of Prime Minister of this nation. And unless there is a constitutional change, this nation remains Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not saying that it is impossible for constitutional change to come, but until such a time, then we must function and operate within the remit of what the Constitution dictates. And based on Section 75 of that said Constitution, it indicates that this country is headed by the central government, of which Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley is head at this present time. I don't know if there are plans to remove him by Mr. James or Mr. Ogis, but until such a time comes, he is the head, which in actuality makes him or gives him the ability to speak on matters pertaining to both Trinidad and Tobago. So I just want to debunk that first concept that he's out of place by reason of what the Constitution dictates and by reason of him being Prime Minister. He can speak on any matter pertaining to Trinidad and Tobago. Secondly, I'd like to touch on what we listened to in terms of the video that was cut out by the Honorable Chief Secretary Fali Chavez Agustin. And I want to point out that the instructional word in that particular clip is what Dr. Rowley would have spoken to with respect to the administrative affairs of the functions of the THA. And administrative affairs is different from what the release that came would have spoken to. And again, let me also point out in the release coming out of the office of the Prime Minister, there at no point in time was that language or the jargon used in the release, was it instructional? But it was more from a standpoint of recommendation. And as I was saying to my colleagues here in studio before we actually came on here, I didn't come here this evening to discuss personal preferences and to pick on and so on. What I'm interested in is the facts and the data that we want to speak to. So having said that, let me just create a bit of context that I hope would inform the conversation going forward. This evening, our coming together is to discuss what is deemed to be a call by the Prime Minister for fresh elections. But I want to take us back a bit, just a few days, probably 2 days or so before the statement was made. And it's funny that the outcry didn't come when the minority leader made the call for elections in the House on Thursday. And so I want to create the context for the conversation this evening. The call for elections came firstly from the minority leader after having an exchange where we all saw the Honorable Chief Secretary snatch up his papers and storm out of the House, disregarding all protocols, which I'm certain that Mr. James in studio and Mr. Ogis and yourself know that there is a way that you exit the House by paying your respects to the presiding officer. But what we saw is a hasty retreat, snatching up of papers and leaving the House. And when he was leaving, and again, I'll use the opportunity to debunk another narrative that is foolish, that has been tried to be created, that the minority leader would have used obscene in the House. The minority leader called on him and said to him that, okay, if that's what you're saying, call the elections now. That was the statement made. But some persons, again, with ulterior motives, try to now sully. And as I would have indicated to someone earlier tonight, if in fact the minority leader did use obscene language, then I would say that the Honorable Chief Secretary should ask the presiding officer to resign. Because for the minority leader to use obscene language in the House, and the presiding officer who is sitting on her seat right there to just let it pass, that is a dereliction of duty. But coming forward out of that, so I'm glad that I had the opportunity to clear that up. The minority leader made the call for the elections. What we saw over the weekend is the Prime Minister coming now and expanding on that, being the person that can speak on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to not in Tobago the administrative function, but from the standpoint of governance and good governance at that. And what he spoke to was more recommendation as opposed to instructional. In no way in that release did the Prime Minister instruct anybody. Because as the Honorable Chief Secretary, he pulled the clip to show what the Prime Minister would have said on a political platform. And it is in fact exactly how the Prime Minister operates. In terms of administrative function, he leaves the THA alone. But when it comes to good governance, it's no longer about an individual or a political party. It is about the people of Tobago. And if we read that release, there was a chronological discussion created by the Prime Minister showing from the time that this administration came into office under a PDP mandate and what the central government headed by himself would have done to engage with the administration, to reach out to them, to address matters as it would have been raised, as the Honorable Chief Secretary spoke to issues that he felt was a challenge in terms of Tobago's governance or Tobago's administrative function. Mr. James, I could finish, right?
Yeah, well, I give everybody a chance.
Exactly. And he would have given a chronological flow of what transpired in terms of their interaction. And thus far, I can recall the Chief Secretary even boasting that everything that they've been asking for, they have been getting it. So nowhere in that release was there an instruction. However, what the PM was speaking to is good governance. That, listen, this is what occurred when you had entered office. The people gave the PDP a mandate. And I mean, it's funny to hear the terms that are now being used by the same PDP political leader who everybody, including Mr. James, entertained for the ride into office, and then that fell away.
All right.
So I will end that part there,
right,
having created enough context, and I see my brothers on the two sides writhing. I don't know with what, but
yes. While we having a discussion, can we please show the THA Act as it speaks to the administrative sectors that we have control over?
Right.
So, Mr. James will weigh in as we pull that up.
Right. Mr. Moderator and fellow panelists, I'm not going to fall for your context, Mr. David, at all.
Let me pause you. Let me pause you, Mr. James. On Facebook, social media, I want to put this question to you. Do you guys think that we should that the Chief Secretary should heed the call of the Prime Minister for a call for fresh elections? Put it in the comments. So we really want to know. Go ahead, Mr. James.
So I'm not going to fall Mr. David's context. He's creating no context for me. Let me put that out to you, sir. I'm going to fall for that sophistry. The fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister is not my leader. So don't call quote from the creed or whatever it is. You understand? The Prime Minister is not my leader. He's the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So while you say respect your leaders, he's not my leader. Maybe he's the leader of the PNM. Right? So let me get that straight. And the Prime Minister, when the context you were trying to create, Mr. David, about the Prime Minister gave no instruction. I mean, what is that? I mean, you're a female panelist, so I can't use the words that I really want to use. So I have to respect you.
Please no.
But I would simply say, I will simply say a nice word that is illogical. Right? If the Prime Minister sits here and interferes in what we are doing, then he's out of place. He has increased gas prices about 3 or 4 times. Was that good governance? The economy of Trinidad and Tobago is in shambles. Is that good governance? Tobagonians have to pay like up to 40% more than our Trinidad counterparts for
certain things.
Almost everything that we have to live and get by. Does that concern the Prime Minister? Crime is running away. Anybody has asked him to date will resign and call fresh elections. He has gone to the court to defend his decision to delay the local government elections, and he's talking about democracy. Why didn't he call it at the time it was due? And he goes to the court and wins, you know. That's the temerity of the man. He will use every legal gambit to get his way. But democracy, in this particular case, I wager, did not demand that he went to the court. But he chose to go to the court, delaying the will of the people, delaying the law that was there. Call an election at the time it was constitutionally due. So you see what I'm saying? So when Mr. David speaks about recommendation, the PNM cannot recommend calling fresh elections for nobody. You have Mr. Ansel Dellins, who is the leader of the PNM Council in Tobago, but he's not the leader in the House. So you have a conflict, perhaps. Then you have Mr. Kelvin Morris in the House taking instructions from somebody who is not in the House, and we are calling that democracy. You understand what I'm saying? So you have problems with the DPP, his mismanagement of the DPP, publicly mismanaging that whole thing and denigrating the office of the DPP, if not the person himself. There's significant unemployment in Trinidad. Is the Prime Minister concerned about that? So I really don't want to hear no warped logic here tonight. That and nobody's creating any context for me. You keep your context for the PNM people, and you can live in that context. But let me tell you something in terms of the Tobago House Assembly Act. Let's pull it back up on the screen. Let's see, we deal with Act 8 of 88, because the Prime Minister seems to not have forgotten or not known about this little known act. It's a very short act. Clause 2. So he has been challenging the authority as part of his conversations over the weekend, and making the public believe that Mr. Trevor James and the Chief Secretary and his team are acting unlawfully. So hear what Act 88 says. It says, the Constitution is amended in subsection 3.1 by deleting the definition of public service and substituting the following new definition. This act came about, I'll read it, the other piece, let's hold it on the screen. Because the PNM was opposing the establishment of the Tobago House of Assembly so long ago. And the public officers were not being paid. Because the PNM sold the narrative that because of the words early up in the Tobago House Assembly Act, when it says it's a body corporate. So there was this thinking that it fell under the SASC, Statutory Authority Service Commission. And therefore, the work of the Tobago House Assembly was stymied. Workers weren't being paid. They didn't have authority to do this. They didn't have authority to do that. They're not public officers. They don't have control over Tobago affairs. So A.N.R. Robinson went back to the Parliament and piloted this act and amended the Constitution to give full power to the Tobago House of Assembly over its public service. So Clause 2 continues to say, public service means subject to the provisions of subsection 4 and 5. The service of the government of Trinidad and Tobago or of the Tobago House of Assembly established by Section 3 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act in a civil capacity. What that means is that the Tobago House of Assembly has its own public service. Now, so when you look at the list of matters for which the Assembly is responsible, you will see, if you can pull it up back again, right. We have 33 areas for which the Assembly is responsible. So when you scroll down to item 22, licensing, Tobagonians here in Tobago and in the diaspora in Trinidad, I call them the diaspora in Trinidad and elsewhere, you are seeing that licensing, contrary to what the Prime Minister, his leader, is saying that we are not responsible for. We have just established that we have a public service. The Constitution says so. Licensing is a matter for Tobago. The Prime Minister has no leg to stand on, no right to criticize the Assembly when it is making space for himself by standing up for its area of responsibility, licensing, item 22. So when you shift now to the Tobago House Assembly Act, where a secretary has been appointed to a particular division, he shall exercise general direction and control. So if it is that the minister wants to send licensing officers to Tobago, he has a responsibility and obligation and duty, which he has sworn by oath to uphold the constitutional law and respect the secretary, right, and call the secretary and say, Secretary, we're having some problems with licensing in Tobago and so forth. I have a question. Can we meet and discuss it?
I have a question.
But you can't hold on. You can't disrespect.
Could we have a discussion?
Because
yes.
But we having a discussion.
I have a question.
Well, maybe you need a lesson.
Right?
Maybe you need a lesson. No disruption. Let me just finish this statement. You need a lesson. So stay quiet. Well, I'm giving you one.
I have a question.
So Mr. Moderator, hold on, Mr. Moderator. So the fact of the matter is that these are areas, don't distract me, I ain't gonna lose my train of thought, so don't try that. The fact of the matter is that these are areas for which the Assembly has complete authority, and the Prime Minister should not intervene, as he has said. He is leaving the Assembly to do this work. Right. They are out of place. Right. Let me talk like a man in the street. They're bold and out of place to be coming to Tobago to try to disrupt our governance by an elected assembly.
And
it is wrong.
I have a question. I have a question. Right.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. David, you posed that the Prime Minister said that statement as a statement of recommendation, right? The Prime Minister, do you think the Prime Minister now has to be mindful of the office that he holds, right? And any recommendation that comes out of the office of the Prime Minister must be taken seriously and with weight, because if action is not taken, then a reaction will then take place. Because that is how I'm seeing it. I mean, it could be a recommendation for him to say, all right, yeah, he should do that because X, Y, Z reason. He should call election because X, Y, Z reason. But what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't?
So let me just respond to you. And again, I would like to try and make my comment as short as possible so that we could get enough round robin taking place. I would answer your question by taking us back to the 6-6 deadlock. What was the Prime Minister's position in that instance? He would have made some recommendations, power sharing and so forth. And when no agreement could have come about, he then recommended that, hey, then go back to the polls, call an election, and on his part, as the leader of the central government and the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, made provisions for the election and boundaries. Listen, this is what needs to happen. You all do all your work. And the election and boundaries took it away and so on. That was the Prime Minister's position in that situation. There was no instruction. He met with all parties, and I mean, everything I'm saying here can be verified and validated. There was at no point in time any attempt to hoodwink, to override, or to give any instruction. And that has been the Prime Minister's constant position on matters pertaining to Tobago. Now, I just want to throw this into the mix now again for my colleagues here to respond to. Are you satisfied, and I want you to, in all fairness, with what you have seen develop from the December elections, this administration coming in on one ticket, the absolute disintegration, moving away from that, and then convincing Tobago that nothing was wrong with being independent. The law is silent on it, the law doesn't speak to it, and this is our position, this is our stand, nothing wrong with it. And then all of a sudden coming up with a concept that, no, let us form a political party. This is political tennis. And they're pulling and sucking the people of Tobago into this because there is no identity. They have no political ideology. They're just a bunch of people grasping at straws. And we know what grasps at straws. A drowning man. And I'm saying that here tonight, that these individuals, this administration is drowning. Not just on a personal note as whatever their party they're coming together as. But look at Tobago. The evidence is out there, and I'm going to rest it there to allow the gentleman to speak.
All right, so but before we take, Mr. Ogis, we're coming back to you, but we have to pay another bill, right? So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. And hold it up, Mr. Ogis, we're going to come back.
This is how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show, and everybody's gonna know. Say it to them once again. They better look up below. This is your show, and everybody's gonna know. That's how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show. October will never be better with Tobago Carnival fever. Okay, passage and come on over.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tapago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tapago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO, and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tapago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tapago's at your service.
Back. Right, we're going, but we continue the discussion. Facebook, remember, we want to know on the Facebook Live, on the social media, are you interested in calling a fresh elections, right? Just put it in the comments so that we'll know, we need to know. All right, so Mr. Agis, we left off with you. I don't want to miss you. What you had to add to the conversation?
Now, part of conversation or communicating is about context and content. And if we are to have good communication, it must also be relevant. What is the source? What is the root of the Prime Minister's press release? I want to quote a few things. I want to quote a few salient and critical points from his press release. Quote, "The results of the last Tobago House of Assembly election resulted in a dramatic change of administration," unquote. Again, quote, "These results also very sobering to the PNM, which accepted the results," unquote. Quote, "A brand new political party is now spawned within an intention to take its place within the walls of the THA," unquote. I'm saying, gentlemen, when earlier I mentioned to you the word vomit, my brothers, it's with all due respect, but for us to understand, when an individual has ingested some substances that is incongruent with his biological system, vomit is what takes place. The definition of vomit is an involuntary, it is involuntary. It is possible he didn't want to say these things, but it was just so within him in a psychological, in a psychological format that it came up. And therefore, it means the Prime Minister has identified some things that took place. He mentioned sobering, so which means there was psychological hurt and discomfort within the PNM. Then he mentioned some things that has not taken place. So there's some anxiety involved in this release. And therefore, if we are to really pay attention to the expression of this press release, I think it will bring us to a place. This is why I'm saying I really have some concerns. How is the Prime Minister managing with the demands of the late Patrick Manning,
leadership
of the OPM, the Office of the Prime Minister, the late Patrick Manning would have said Trinidad and Tobago is no easy place to manage, is no easy place to govern. And then, so my dear honorable brother of the soil, I am concerned, and I think we need to pay some attention to his, in my opinion, to how sturdy is his psychological place of being.
I wondering,
let me add something on top of that.
Before I make a comment, I was wondering if it is that because the point at which he released the statement was a Sunday evening. I was like, did his people read this before he put it out? Because there are some things you could say, you have some things that you have more tact in saying, you understand? you polish it up, make it look nice. This statement look very unpolished to me. So
Well, let me just.
I'm trying to figure out.
Before I want to ask us a question because I asked that question, nobody answered it.
Yes.
I want to still bring.
Yeah.
And forgive me for my ignorance. I may be much more ignorant than you too. But what is the context of this evening's discussion? All I'm hearing is attacks on the Prime Minister and his mental and his psychological and all kind of foolishness.
No,
and this is what I'm saying. That's not. Okay. This is what I'm saying. My concern is that when we sit on the airwaves and have the opportunity to speak to issues and speak to Tobago and the issues that are plaguing Tobago, let us bring facts and data to the table so that we can discuss pertinent
So let me bring a fact for you.
matters.
He's asking for a fact.
And the conversation is, with respect to the elections, do we think that it is a valid call? And I would have thrown in the mix that this call started by the minority leader. I have not heard any of my
So let me address
distinguished panelists speak to that.
Let me speak directly to that. Some years ago, when Orville London was in pop. No, I'm talking about.
Let's discuss Thursday's call and come forward. Come on, this is what we have to do.
Listen, here I'm saying. We could go back as far as we want. Once it is relevant to the discussion and to the political developments here in Tobago. Orville London, in his administration, here's what he said. He won facts. The PNM, when they want to call for election, when other people call for elections, they have a problem. Here's Orville London saying here. The Prime Minister, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, is presumptuous in trying to force the island of Tobago House of Assembly, THA, in calling an early THA elections, said Chief Secretary Orville London. He was responding to the Prime Minister, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, call for an early election. No, they didn't like that at all when the Prime Minister, just like
how many parties will change there anytime in the term?
Give me a chance, the man. Give me a chance. So the question here, he questioned his Prime Minister, his leader, calling for elections. When another Prime Minister, just a few years ago, called for elections, they said she out of place. Orville is saying here, Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar, you're out of place to get involved in Tobago business.
And again, we take a little piece and using it for
if I use the whole, you wouldn't even like.
What is the context?
Let me finish. Moderator.
What is the
I'm saying the context is relevant. The context is
and I'm
moderator ruled.
I'm saying.
The moderator ruled. So let me.
What's the context the Prime Minister spoke to in his release?
The fact of the matter,
there was a chronological, and nobody has yet answered if you are satisfied with what this administration has done since coming into office in terms of, this is the third time we are in a change in less than 2 years.
You are the one.
Are we satisfied with that? That's why I'm asking.
David, you are the one that said that the topic is on
elections.
And the basis upon which
let the moderator talk, man.
Is not
what has happened.
Let the moderator speak.
Performance of the administration. It's based on the call of the Prime Minister.
Here.
So
the
fact of the matter, just keep a little quiet, Mr. David.
I just want to know
I'm answering you. Your Prime Minister is calling for elections. Another Prime Minister called for elections and the PNM didn't like it. So we are talking about elections and whether the central government or your Prime Minister. Let me finish.
Mr. London
Let me finish my statement.
Force.
The Prime Minister is calling for elections.
Force.
The Prime Minister is demanding, which is force, elections.
Show me that in the release.
And
show me the demand in the release.
When they won the receiving end, they didn't like it. So the act says the Chief Secretary will call the elections when he so pleases. And that's the law. And nobody should do anything to our democracy to out the power and responsibility of the Chief Secretary. You know, there's been tremendous outreach. Well, not outreach, wrong word. There's tremendous interference by Trinidad, just as you from Trinidad.
I don't think there's nobody who doesn't know that.
It's typical
No, I
of
have a
Trinidadians.
concern,
Let me finish. So the point I'm making, well, you all interfering.
But you have a
let me finish the point now.
Let Max finish his point. Because
The man tell let me finish the point.
He's going to interrupt you.
I had to attack you.
Interrupt everybody else.
I have to attack you.
Go ahead, Max.
So we have significant interference by Trinidadians, as we've seen tonight. You had the issue of matters under the 5th schedule, where it is clear on item 18, infrastructure, including air and sea transportation, wharves and airport. Pull it up, let us the public see. You understand? So that the Prime Minister, I think it was Basil Pandey at the time, sent equipment under Carlos John, who was the Minister of Works, I think it was, to pave roads in Tobago. So not only did they pay them, it is also an act.
It's a customary thing.
It's a customary thing where they want to interfere with the assembly and the powers of the assembly.
Right.
Look, it's there under item 16, Tobagonians.
Right.
And they sent equipment here and begin to pave roads. You've seen the same thing by this Prime Minister utilizing a state entity to say we will come and develop the port for you. So once they are not in power in Tobago, they will intervene and say all kinds of things, denigrate the assembly, but they're forgetting that they were stealing from the public purse for 20 years.
All right, Mr. Marlon.
You deal with that. Let's talk about the corruption.
I want to give
20
Mr.
years.
Ogis the opportunity.
All right, Mr. Ogis.
But you're asking question, answer to
then I
that.
will get back to Mr. James.
Mr. Ogis, you have anything to add to it?
You know, Brother David would have said that it was a recommendation. The Prime Minister has taken an oath to uphold the law and the Constitution. If it's a recommendation, it means the recommendation is illegal. The Prime Minister quoted, he said, whilst under no legal obligation to resign their office. So therefore, we must decide whether we want to operate within the precincts of the law or let us be unlawful. Let's be a tongue for all.
But it should always be under the law, because I would point back to when we had the 6-6, right? The entire time we were calling for somebody to call our elections, right? The House could not come together to call our elections, and they took full advantage of that because there was nothing in the law, right, stating that. So I don't see why now the law should not be the guiding document as to how to figure out the situation.
If therefore there is no legal remit or legal authority for the Prime Minister to call an election in Tobago, he should not be making the recommendation.
Mr. David, we're going to go.
He's usurping the authority or an attempt
again, let me present. Thanks. And I am open for conversation and discussion.
Yes, we're going to talk.
So Mr. James would have read a document, and again, I will refer to the release that came. And even if he doesn't want context, I prefer context because I like order. If we don't have order, then the conversation goes all over the place, which is what tends to be happening every now and then. The context within which the PM would have made a recommendation, just as he did in the 6-6 deadlock, just as he did with respect to fresh elections. And I don't understand, is it that the gentlemen are accusing the Prime Minister of breaking the law? But if they are, perchance, peradventure they are, I find it is a very convenient accusation. Because we have sat for the last year and almost a half and seen several opportunities that this administration has taken where they broke the law blatantly. And I must say that Mr. James is definitely here in the capacity of Mr. James / lawyer, because everything that he speaks to seems to be in defense of his relatives' positions. But I'll get to that in a bit. I'll get to that in a bit. And I must say, I must extend my disappointment as well, because I've known Mr. James for a very long time, I think over 15 years or so. And to hear him say tonight, to attack me, that you from Trinidad too, when he's making a conversation and trying to tie it to Trinidad oppressing to me. I thought that we were beyond that, because I do not allow politics to get into my friendships. So, Mr. Max James, I'm sorry if I...
No, but you remember, my friend, I just say that at Trinidad and you don't understand.
No, that is not the context that you spoke.
I just say...
But I just wanted to touch on it. I am above that, because I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and I think that we all have a very serious contribution to make to the development of our Twin Island state. Having said that, let me come back. The Prime Minister created proper context. And again, let us look, and I'm glad that Lance would have quoted what he did, which supports what I said, that it is not an instruction. The Prime Minister clearly indicated that though there is no legal, he went to the law. But what he's saying is that in the context of governance, and this is the point that we are missing, and I asked the question, nobody answered. Are you satisfied with the governance of Tobago? We've seen Mr. Ho Choi Charles come out blatantly and speak out against it. We've seen Dr. Vanish James come out blatantly and speak against it. We've even seen Mr. Anthony James come blatant and spoke out against it and condemned. I think Dr. Vanish James even gave the administration, in terms of the way they manage their matters, as zero on this very station. So I'm asking the question from a standpoint of governance. Are these gentlemen satisfied that what we have seen over the last year and almost a half, that it represents good governance, that a people, an electorate, should feel comfortable and sit back and say that, okay, even though this is not who we gave our mandate to, and everybody knows that the mandate was given to the PDP. In the annals of time, and when you look down the corridors of time in 10 years, what will be recorded in the books is that the PDP won the THA elections 14-1. That cannot be reversed, and it cannot be erased.
So let me respond to him.
I got to pause it because we had to pay one more bill.
One more bill.
Wow, this is an expensive program.
We have to pay one more bill, guys. Hold your thoughts, and then we'll come back and we'll hear out your thoughts and wrap things up. All right. So we're live on Tobago Updates. We're on 40 Hour. We're discussing should we call a fresh elections. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Limage Parfait Day Spa, your urban oasis and wellness center. Our services includes massages, treatments, facials, pedicures, weight management, detox programs, and much more. Call us today at 624-1452 or 720-7474. Trinidad locations and Bonacore, Tobago at 273-7772. Let us treat you like the VIP you are.
Safely and anonymously. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime. You can play your part safely and anonymously. Report a crime. Earn a reward. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime. Be a hero. Champion. Fearless citizen. Be a crime stopper safely and anonymously. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime.
All right, and we're back with the expensive program as referred to by Mr. David. We're an expensive program. We have to pay the bills. All right, and we continue in the discussion of the call of the Prime Minister to call fresh elections. Before we move on to the response of Mr. James and Mr. Ogis, we're going to give Mr. David his 15 seconds. He said 15 seconds to read out this passage of statement before we go.
I just like the director to pull it up. And this is a matter in relation to the National Reforestation and Watershed Program in particular, where the THA found itself in the court. The next page for me. I just want to read the final slide of that judgment. Next page, Mr. Director. Right, this one. Section 25(1) of the Act does not give the THA responsibility to formulate and or implement policy in respect of matters set out in the 5th schedule to the Act, which may frustrate or hamper the implementation of government policy. I'd just like to rest that there.
So is that in referring to the EMA Act, or
that is a court ruling that came with respect to the
but you're juxtaposing that to the EMA Act?
And everything that we're seeing clear breaches and where we're seeing instructions handing up.
So, Mr. James, you have the floor to respond to his question on the governance of
That's why I want
of the current administration, the performance.
We'll deal with that nonsense that was just read.
What it is, I mean.
But you don't want to answer the question.
He doesn't want to answer the question.
He
doesn't want to answer it.
Let's keep quiet. So here's Orville London, a PNM talking here. He says here, I think the Prime Minister is a little presumptuous, quite honestly, to be telling us in the Tobago House of Assembly that we should call elections. Here's their leader complaining a few years ago, you know.
Change the word from force
right?
to call.
I'm reading. The election will be called when the THA as an institution believes that we will set the date, and then the president will call the elections, London said. So you had over London complaining. Kamla Besessa, you can't tell us in Tobago or suggest or whatever, force us into calling an election. You're out of place. That's the context. And London was demanding that she stay out of it. Yet, a few years after, you're now seeing the Prime Minister doing the same thing that Orville didn't like. Right? So let me continue in my vein here. So there are 33 items for which the Assembly is responsible. All right? And no court judgment could oust that. That's the law. So here you have a situation where of the 33 items, and I'm asking the Chief Secretary here tonight, continue to do your work. But as I said before, you had under Patrick Manning, a PNM Prime Minister and Trinidadian, telling Orville London, scrap the telecommunications authority that you just established. Orville London, he says, scrap the Toman Country program that you have and force Orville London to send back Toman Country to Trinidad.
All right.
And that is having a deleterious effect on our economy here in Tobago and decision-making, banking and finance for the people of Tobago. You understand?
I want to give Mr. James, I want to give Mr. Ogis,
Right.
if it is that you don't want to answer the question,
please.
What is the question?
on the performance of
the governance?
So the question,
Mr. David,
let me answer. So you will be satisfied. So let me answer the question, Mr. David.
Not me,
I'm asking you whether you are happy with the performance of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Don't come on the program and talk about
whether I'm saying you are refusing to answer the question.
I'm fully satisfied, sir.
What
has
happened?
Yes, I'm fully satisfied. No, you can't tell who is coming. I'm fully
but he was already told to talk.
No. I'm fully satisfied with the performance.
Let me finish the statement and then
But you see, you always interfere.
But it can't take long because you use up the time before.
I'm saying to him, I am fully satisfied, and Tobagonians from my polling are fully satisfied with the performance of this particular House of Assembly under Farley.
Okay.
And I'm asking him, and likewise, are you, Mr. David, satisfied with the Rowleys management of the government of Trinidad? I think that's a real question we should answer today.
So we're going to let Mr. Ogis answer, and then you answer his
Gentlemen,
question.
look what's my concern. I'm satisfied with the THAs. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing so much innovativity and initiative. And Mr. David, a blind man in a dark room with a wooden glasses will see and identify the initiatives of this this administration.
Tell me one thing that this administration has started. Tell me one policy that they've developed. Tell me one policy that they've implemented.
But let me say to you, look, one of my concerns as to the Prime Minister's call, or you call it a recommendation.
They answer a question, or no?
The Prime Minister, it is the laws of Trinidad and Tobago that empowers the Prime Minister, and that are responsible for every benefit, every entitlement he enjoys. His motor vehicle is the arrangement for security. It is the law that empowers him. Housing, all his allowances, his remuneration, the law empowers him. In the absence of the law, they are not entitlements to him. And therefore, he holds to that, to the benefits that is derived out of the law that govern all these terms and conditions of his office. It is the same law that empowers the THA. It is the same law that empowers the THA and their domain. And therefore, if you are to use the law in your context, and therefore you're saying, whilst there are no legal requirements, that should be the point of focus. That should be the nucleus wherein which we communicate with each other. Is either we use the law, we operate within the law, or outside of the law for both entities, the central government and the THA. Otherwise, it is what we call hypocrisy or inconsistency.
Before you come in, Mr. David, right? And you could probably answer this after your answer, right? We speak about the recommendation. Again, we're going back to the statement. Is it within the remit? Because we know he can make a statement, but should he have made a statement? Should this not come from the recommendation of the office of the president, who we pay $19 million to operate every year?
So let me, that's my question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. David.
So let me say this. And again, I'm glad that you have become kind to the statement that it was a recommendation, and Mr. Ogis as well, as he quoted.
We can't say it's a demand because there's the fact that it's not demand.
I'm seeing the
that's just fault for his non-member recommendation.
So what I'm saying here is this. The context upon which the PM would have spoken is out of concern, just as everybody else who speaks out against it for the people of Tobago. And you see, I think that what we have is a number of persons who have not yet been able to separate campaign and party politics from governance. I don't know if there's a clear understanding of governance. Governance means governance for all of Tobago. Governance is not coming in and first that you start to speak about political hires. Governance is not coming in and just ending people's contracts, terminating people. Governance is not stifling an entire industry on the basis of their political persuasion. Governance is not fabricating an entire report. I don't know if these gentlemen are blind to what has been taking place. Fabricating an entire report just now. Edison, wait. You don't have to know if it's true, because the chief secretary who said from the 9th of September that he's going to present an audit report, which will prove collusion against all the contractors that they blacklisted and killed the construction sector in Tobago, to date has not produced it, and even worse, has started paying the contractors. The fact that you started pay the contractors is an indication that your audit has failed, because the recommendation has come.
Assumption.
Just now. If the basis upon not paying was collusion and corruption, and not paying all year, and then I start to pay, because up to now, 6 or 7 months after you say, I am getting the final report in a week time, you can't produce the report, and then you just start to pay. And I will go as far as saying that it has come to our knowledge that the recommendation was There's nothing against these gentlemen go ahead and pay. And I'm asking the question, is that governance? And what I'm saying, the question, I think the gentlemen are understanding, we're not talking about performance as poor as it was. The question is governance. What has happened in the governance structure of Tobago?
So you get
Mr. James want me to stop.
Yeah. You let Mr. James come. Thanks for stopping.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
You're stopping like you're tired, you know.
I'm sure you can go on, so I can go on on this.
Go ahead, Mr. James.
No, listen. The fact of the matter is that he's trying to frame an argument that the Prime Minister is speaking about governance. The Prime Minister ain't talking about governance. The Prime Minister is talking about members of the Assembly forming a party, continuing what they are doing. The Prime Minister is annoyed about that. They are afraid that the TPP has been formed. They have been saying, oh, you're not a party. So the party formed now. And as soon as they recognize that the party has been formed and we are going forward in terms of all the good things that this when I said we, I mean Tobagonians. Tobago is
the party.
Don't interrupt me.
You say we are formed and we going forward.
The party has been formed, or we in Tobago have formed the party. It doesn't change the context of the argument. All right? And they recognize that it's the end for them. They're trying to stop Trevor James. They criticize him at every level. We have seen evidence in the House, which they can't refute. One contractor in 15 days' time, and over the period of, one contract, $28 million for given basketing, for given basketing in front space. Please, no man, give me a chance, no man. Why are you interfering so? You like that? Give me a chance. So you have seen contracts given by persons in the Assembly who underwent suspension without the relevant requisite authority, sharing out contracts left, right, and center. And these guys are supporting that and want to come. The Chief Secretary will lay his audit report when the time is right. You're going to force the man to do when he's ready? When he's not ready? When he's not ready? The fact of the matter,
even though you're promising every time.
So the fact of the matter, Mr. Moderator, is that will come. I just hope, as my partner, that you ain't gonna lock up, right? But just as how the Minister of National Security is saying, he have no security crime plan for the country. He ain't calling for fresh elections. A Minister of Government, and a statement not refuted by the Prime Minister, he said, I have no strategic plan for the solving of crime. You ain't calling an election for that. But a political party has been formed in Tobago. The fellas moving forward, and you saying, well, you didn't come in that party, it's a new party, so all you call the election because that's what the people voted for. How ridiculous a statement could be.
All right. Mr. Ogis, you have any closing statements? I can't let Mr. David come in. If he come in, we should be going on 9 o'clock. We're going on 9 o'clock until 9. Until 10, sorry. Go ahead.
The proof of the pie is in the pudding.
We're going until 10 o'clock.
And you know, the reason why that the PNM moved from a place of 10-2, 6-6, and 114 to date is because, you see, the PNM has been, and this is a constructive statement, it's not descending. The PNM has disrespected the intelligence of Tobagonians for plenty of years. Tobagonians decided that we are going to reject certain arguments that you're going to forward to us. As a matter of fact, the system, you know, when you use an old system against a new one, it tells you format unreadable. It's unreadable in the reasoning mind. Tobagonians and the world by extension we are in an era of information. And therefore, for the PNM to forward certain positions, it is an insult to Tobagonians. We have sent our children to school for years to bring a new standard and level of understanding and reasoning. And for you to be using 1918 reasoning in 2020 2021, Tobagonians will continue to reject the PNM. As a matter of fact, each time the Honorable Keith Rowley intervenes in the politics of Tobago,
PNM is further
it
rejected.
takes the PNM further to extinction, and Tobago will be the place where the PNM will be buried.
All right. So let me Mr. David. Mr. David, we have 1 minute. We have 1 minute.
I want to say it very quickly. And I think that what has been said here is a disrespect to Tobagonians. Because what it implies is that Tobagonians are foolish people. Because the Tobago population elected PNM to govern for 21 years. Time and time again. 5 elections consecutively. So is it that these gentlemen are claiming or implying that Tobago people foolish? Having said that, let me say this and I'll close with this. As Mr. James read, Mr. London said the PM is forcing. Kamala had no reason to substantiate her call. What we see here is the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, giving a series, and as I indicated, a chronological explanation of what has transpired, and it's recommended that based on the collapse of governance in Tobago, this is my recommendation, which for any right-thinking citizen is the correct way to go.
All right. Mr. James, 1 minute. We finish it. 1 minute, Mr. James.
Yes, sir.
Everybody here like to have the last word.
When the Tobago House Assembly was established many years ago, we have to look for what was the intent of Parliament and what was the will of the people of Tobago. The intent of Parliament was to give Tobago such powers to govern itself. We have seen over the years, Mr. Moderator, where the PNM, from since 2001, for about 20 years, handed back every responsibility to the central government, as we like to say, to his PNM colleagues, Orville London as the chief culprit, supported by Rowley and every PNM who are, at the time, who are now defecting to the TPP. TPP, all right? Get fresh. All right? So that what this administration is now trying to do is to take up its responsibilities under the 5th scheduled items. And I encourage the Chief Secretary to go robustly and do what you have to do for the people of Tobago. You have been elected to do those things. Build out the institutions in agriculture, customs and excise, licensing, and all of that. And I think if he takes that seriously, his responsibilities seriously under the 5th schedule, in a few short years, Tobago will be a much developed place. And I ask my Trinidadian friend here and PNM friend here, let us stop interfering in the business of Tobago. The Prime Minister is on record that says he will not interfere, but he continues to interfere because they believe that it's only the PNM could run this country. We have seen the kinds of corruption, rank, naked corruption. Tobagoans have voted that out. Let us give Mr. Augustine and his team, Tobagoans, I call upon you, especially in Trinidad. Your people in Tobago are suffering from the actions of the PNM. All right. And you must let the PNM know that we are not going to support what you are doing.
All right. So yes, racism. I will close off by saying my stance is always when elephants trample, the answers get mashed, right? And it should, for me, we should always consider what the will of the people are, right? On the Facebook page, it looks like 65 kind of 35 split, 65 not in favor of election, and the 35 are in favor of election, calling election. Every time we have an election, we have to heal as a people. The amount of divisiveness that is being stoked in the public and all of that, we have to take time to heal. So I generally don't like to enter into elections lightly until it is necessary. But again, let the will of the people speak and let the will of the people decide. Tobago people decide if we are ready to go back, all right? Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Thank you guys so much for your input on this discussion. I think the Facebook the audience really was really engaged tonight. They really appreciated the discussion. All right. And until next week, guys, it's again another day of Bacchanal in this small island of 60,000 people. All right. So we will see what happens and as the week unfolds. But until then, all right, I bid you adieu. My name is Edison Thomas. I'll see you next week.